done this exercise. This is something that I learned from my reading. When you throw the kid a ball and they say, I'm not athletic, I can't catch it. Catch the ball, throw it to them. 8 out of 10 times they can't catch it. But if you say something like, all I want you to do this time is tell me which way the ball is spinning. Watch the lines on the ball, tell me which way it's spinning. And you throw it to them, and before you know it, they're catching the ball. Because what you've done is you've created a sensory task that they're able to complete. Maybe I'm not going to be a baseball pitcher, but I can tell what direction that ball's coming. And in the context of that success, I'm more successful overall. So the relationship corollary to that is we've developed this heuristic of 3 social senses, so sight, sound, and space. Sight being, and it's very much what it sounds like. These aren't tricky scientific terms. What your eyes are telling you about, the expression on the person's face, the what's going on around you, and drawing your focus to the social information from sight. Sound in terms of their words and the meaning of their words, their tone of voice, their volume of voice, ambient noise, and space having to do with their own sort of somatic awareness, their own body awareness, being in their own space, being aware of the space between them and the other person, their social space, social touch in terms of when is it appropriate to high five or fist bump or hug, and then context. So you wouldn't have the same conversation in a library that you have in a parking lot where there were cars driving around. So and then what we'll do is try to create the cognitive equivalent of muscle memory, in that we try during our activities to really help the children bring their awareness back to these 3 senses. The long term here is that the way we react, if we're going to react instantaneously and authentically in a relationship, what our brain does is, in the instant that it's happening, flip through all of our pictures of other social interactions, and we say, what is this like? What is this not like? Is this safe? Is this not safe? But for a child who has sensory issues, or an adult, or anybody, and this is something that's common with this autism spectrum or ADHD, but it's not alone in that. They're not alone in that. If there's a light flickering, a fluorescent light flickering in the corner during class, and that's all you can focus on, you create an incomplete social memory of the interaction you're in. We've all met some. Or for an adult, somebody who's tapping away on their phone while they're talking to their wife or their kids, later they can't go back to that and use it in a way that adds to their understanding of the current social interaction they're having. So using these 3 senses, we're trying to help these kids to create complete social memories of the interactions that they're having, so that then they develop this bank of helpful, pleasant social interactions to draw on when they're in a new one. So rather than this kind of string of terrifying, sensory overload experiences of zipper feels like a cactus on the back of my neck, and the fluorescent light is flickering because it's about to die, and there's a dishwasher is whining. What does that mean? You get a complete social interaction to use in the future. And please, I've talked about this to the degree that I'm not sure if it sounds like gibberish to other people, so feel free to reel it back and ask me questions. But at its basis, it's sort of it's a drawing the attention to the important aspects of a social interaction, to create an authentic connection. And maybe that's successful and maybe it's not, but you take what you get, and you apply what you've learned from it to your future interactions.
Okay, so during the social play groups, how many kids are there? How many adults or peer mentors are there?
So it depends on the age group. The younger kids, we have a cap of 5 kids, just because that's what we've determined works for the dynamic in the space.
Okay.
We have no less than one peer mentor and 2 facilitators, usually sometimes 3 facilitators, depending on the needs of the kids. Some of the groups we've got kids who really need a one-on-one to stay on task, and in others we don't. And I often find myself overstaffed, but I'd rather be overstaffed than understaffed. Our biggest group is what I call the intermediate group, which is 8 to 10-year-olds, 8 to 11-year-olds,
Okay.
9 to 11-year-olds. And with that, it's about a 4 to 1 with staff to children.
And what type of activities would you do? Give me like one activity for the small group and one activity for the intermediate.
Well, so all of our groups follow the same format, which is there's sort of this 3-step approach, which is from our end is listening, sharing, and then applying. So each group starts with what's called connected conversations, where the kids come in and they sit down at a table together and we share some food and we talk about our week. We share the joys and concerns. We call them our successes and challenges. Some weeks it's very light, and some weeks, like this past week, it's very heavy. But what the facilitators are listening for during this is a very important time for us, because our curriculum is emergent, which means that it's based on on one part on our the arc we create with the curriculum of what we want to teach when, but then just as important is what the children bring to the groups with them from home and from school. So listen to what's relevant to them at that time, because there has to be a connection to what's going on in their lives. So children are talking and we're listening. And then there's usually a small teaching component where I'll introduce an idea. This past week, we talked a little bit about not with elementary and preschool groups, but with intermediate, middle, and high school groups. We talked about how there's 2 components to anything that happens. There's what happens, and then there's what we bring to it, how we think about it, what the story we give to it is. And then sometimes they are really interested in talking about it and want to contribute and ask questions, and other times they're not, but they're hopefully absorbing it. Then we move into activities for the last usually half of the group, where we do small group activities, which the content of them is less important than the context. So often children will bring in stuff from home that they want to share, that they've been enjoying. Sometimes I'll have something that, a game that I've discovered that I think will lead to good conversations, but the game itself is less important than the fact that they're in these small groups, and it gives the facilitators a chance to come around and help them to bring their awareness back to these social senses. Where's your body? Where's your friend's body? What information are you getting? And to try to work at cognitive muscle memory to get used to doing it. We'll see a kid who is employing one of their self-regulation, their sensory regulation techniques, like looking up at the lights, or rocking back and forth, or fiddling with their sleeve, and we'll try to help draw them either out of their space a little bit more into the social space, or sometimes out of the social space back into their personal space if they're losing touch with where their body is and what their voice is doing. So I think that's a really long answer to say that the activities themselves, the games we play,
but I think that gives
are
a
just
really
the scaffolding for this process that we do.
Right.
Okay.
That's good. Yeah. That's fantastic, because it will give a good explanation of what goes on, and that there is a format, and why it's that way. So, and how often do you have the groups?
Once a week, an hour each.
Once a week, an hour each. Okay. And are they Are you a nonprofit? Are they billable to insurance companies? How does all that privately
Because
funded?
of my human development degree, it's not billable to insurance companies,
Okay.
but being accessible to, I feel a responsibility being in an area which is underserved to make it as accessible to many people as possible. So I've kind of figured out what we need to charge based on our expenses, the space and insurance and facilitators and materials, and then have really tried to keep it as close to that as possible for the families. So the cost is it's $35 per session, which covers the hour face-to-face, as well as I try to follow up with the parents, and I end up doing outside case management. They'll often ask me to attend PBT meetings, or with developmental questions, or ask for behavioral support, and I do all of that just as part of.
Oh, that's
the service.
amazing.
And I mean, in one sense, I feel good about it because I haven't had that many people say to me, "Sorry, that doesn't work for us." On the other hand, I have had somebody say that we can't afford that, and so I'm concerned about that. And it's interesting because when we first got started, I was closer to the traditional model, and so I would sort of say, this is one option. If you can get it covered by insurance somewhere else, great. But I know that what I do is not the best fit for every family. And it's not the best fit for every child, and not every child is the best fit for the groups, and so we come back to the question, is it working for the child, is it working for the group, is it working for the objectives and goals we set as, from myself and the parents, and then usually bringing in some of the ideas from their constellation of care, their school team, the primary care physician who refers them.
Do you find that you have better success with a certain type of autism, or do you have better success with kids that are more high functioning, or does it just vary depending on the kid? Because like they say, when you meet one kid with autism, you've only met one kid with autism.
Right. That's right. And the issue is that the real therapist in the room is the group dynamic. And so I do my best to shape a positive therapeutic experience for each group, but each child gets what they get out of it based
Right.
on what they bring, and then what they're getting from everybody else in this sort of soup of enthusiasm and interests and idiosyncratic triggers and emotional exhaustion from it being at the end of the day after a long day of school. And so it varies. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a profile of a child that works for